Welcome back to Carneades.org. Today we're going to be continuing with objections to the psychological approach to personal identity. If you haven't checked out the original video on personal identity or the one on the psychological approach to personal identity, you might want to do that now. For those of you keeping score at home, this is going to be video number 97 here at Carneades.org. Keep your eyes peeled for video number 100, where we're going to be taking a look at how to debunk and doubt the Cogito, I Think Therefore I Am, by Rene Descartes. But before we get to that, we have to have some understanding of the problems with the idea of personal identity. So, we're going to be taking a look in this video at both objections to the memory criterion for personal identity and the causal dependence criterion for personal identity. So, stay tuned. So, the memory criterion, as we remember, is a person is identical to another person if one of them remembers the experiences of the other. So, what if we have the following example? Imagine a lawyer and a student. The lawyer remembers the student not paying a library fine. The lawyer remembers being that student in the past and not paying that library fine. So, the lawyer is identical to the student. Also imagine a law professor later in life. The law professor remembers her law career. She remembers being that lawyer. So, the professor is identical to the lawyer. However, the professor does not remember paying the library fine as a student. Therefore, the student is identical to the lawyer, and the lawyer is identical to the professor, but the professor is not identical to the student. This is a problem because it breaks what's called the transitive rule of identity. Basically, if student equals lawyer, lawyer equals professor, professor has to equal student. But according to the memory criterion, it doesn't work out that way. Therefore, we've got a problem. If that wasn't convincing, check out this one. Imagine someone named Blot and someone named Clot. Blot is someone in the present, Clot is someone in the past. Blot remembers events from Clot's life. Let's say a specific event from Clot's life. But it's still possible that Blot's memories are not genuine. Maybe Blot's really old and is kind of making up different memories or doesn't realize that he's remembering certain things. And in fact, the body of Blot, at least, was somewhere else at the time when Clot was having those experiences. They are the correct experiences from Clot's life, but there doesn't seem to be kind of a causal history related to how those experiences got from Clot having them to Blot remembering them. The memories aren't genuine. And the only way we can tell if the memories are genuine is if Blot and Clot are actually the same person, but that seems to kind of beg the question. It's exactly the question we're trying to answer. Are they the same person? Well, their memories are the same, so they are the same person. But what if their memories aren't genuine? Well, the only way we can tell if the memories are genuine is if they're already the same person. We've gone in a circle, and it's a problem. So, in order to deal with some of these problems, we'll take a look at causal dependence. But first, here are a series of questions to make you even further question the memory approach. Did someone else walk my body home when I was drunk if I don't remember walking home? Does someone else live in my body if I have a dreamless sleep because I don't remember what happened for those 8 hours? If I don't remember every time that I rode the subway, does that mean that someone else has been riding the subway in my place? And if at a certain point in time I forget riding the subway on January 15th, 2007, does that mean that I suddenly stopped being connected to that person and I stopped being that person? If I get amnesia, does the former me die and a new person come into existence? And if I don't remember my childhood or parts of my childhood, did I never live that? Was I never that person? Did someone else experience my childhood? These are all really important questions for the memory criterion. Now, like I said, we're going to take a look at the causal dependence criterion, which gets around some of these problems, but unfortunately, it's going to have some new ones of its own. So as we remember, causal dependence relies on psychological connectedness, which means that our psychological states were caused by our previous psychological states, and being psychologically continuous with those previous selves being always psychologically connected to them, and so on and so forth. Let's take a look at some objections. So, it's been said that you can lose a hemisphere of your brain and still stick around, and still be you. Your mental states, according to the causal dependence criterion, were still caused by previous mental states that you were in, so you seem to still be you. And in fact, this has been done. People have lost a hemisphere of their brain because of inoperable brain tumors and such things in very severe cases, and still stuck around. They haven't had all their faculties, but according to causal dependence, they've still been them. Also, according to causal dependence, if you needed to transplant a hemisphere of your brain, you would still be you. Or if you needed to transplant specifically the cerebellum, the important part of your brain that does all of the higher thinking and memories and all that kind of stuff, the majority of your brain, that gets transplanted to someone else's brain that maybe only has kind of the basic body functions, nervous system, and that kind of stuff, you would still be you, because your memories, your mental states were transplanted to someone else. So, according to these, take a look at the following thought experiment. So, imagine you send your left half of your brain, your left hemisphere gets transplanted into a guy named Lefty, who was basically a completely blank slate until got that hemisphere of your brain. And your right hemisphere of your brain is transplanted into a guy named Righty, who also was basically a completely blank slate until he got that half of your brain. As we've shown, you're okay to survive with only half of your brain, and as long as the important parts get transplanted, you can be transplanted to someone else and maintain your identity. The problem is you seem to be identical with both Righty and Lefty. They are both thinking your thoughts, and all of their mental states were caused by your mental states. But you can't be identical with two things at once, because maybe Righty is hungry at one point and Lefty isn't. You can't be both hungry and not hungry at the same time. It's a contradiction. So we have a problem. Going all the way back, reductio ad absurdum, we can see that there seems to be a problem with causal dependence criterion. If you don't like that, try this one on for size. So, imagine a person walks into a magic room, and in this magic room, what happens is somebody flips a switch, and all of a sudden, a perfect copy of that person appears in a perfectly identical room right next to it. There is no way for either of these people to tell who they are. They both seem perfectly, from first-person perspective, they seem to be the person who just walked into the room. Both of them think they're the person who walked into the room. But only one of them is identical to the original. The other is not, even though their quantitative experiences are perfectly identical. There's no way for either person to figure out if they're identical to the person that walked into the box or if they were created moments ago. This seems to be a bit of a problem because there seem to be two people thinking the same set of thoughts. It seems that even though some thoughts were caused by that perfect causal chain and some thoughts were just caused by a machine that made them, both of those people are thinking those same thoughts. How can they be qualitatively identical, but not numerically identical? This is a little confusing. So, those were some objections to the psychological approach. Next up, we're going to be taking a look at the somatic approach, which instead of thinking about memories, thinks about the body and how the body is identical. Watch this video and more at Carneades.org, and stay skeptical, everybody.